But turning to Saskatchewan now, where the RCMP have provided new details about Canada's deadliest mass stabbing. Officials have released a detailed timeline of the events that left 11 dead and 17 injured on James Smith Cree Nation and the nearby town of Weldon last September.
These homicides, the investigation into them, and the apprehension efforts have all impacted all of the RCMP investigators and civilian employees who responded. They poured their hearts and souls into this investigation. Although they can never truly know the pain that you, the community, have felt, please know that they have mourned your losses along with you and have been dedicated to bringing closure and healing to you and your communities through their actions each day.
The mass stabbings were carried out by Miles Sanderson, who died in police custody shortly after his death. Police said the complex investigation involved dozens of different crime scenes and more than 200 witness interviews. The CBC's Sarah Galashan has been following that update closely and joins me now. So, Sarah, what more are we learning about the timeline of these mass stabbings?
Over the Labor Day weekend, Andrew. This went on for hours with the RCMP going through hour by hour how things unfolded in the lead up to it and afterwards. And some of what we heard, we already knew transpired on the James Cree First Nation over the Labor Day weekend, but some of it we didn't. In the lead up to it, for instance, we learned that one of the two brothers, Damien Sanderson, was at a bar with others and telling those others that he and his brother Miles have a mission to do and that people will hear all about it in the next few hours. And indeed, it was hours later, at about just before 5 a.m. on the Sunday, September 5th, that the violence began. We heard that the first house that the two brothers went into, there was an assault on a man that Damien actually stepped in to try and stop that from happening before he was himself subsequently attacked by Miles, the RCMP say, in a van as they were speeding away. And the RCMP talked about how Damien Sanderson died. Take a listen.
Based on the scene examination and the investigation, we've determined that in an effort to escape the attack inside the van, Damien fled from the vehicle and ran into the nearby bushes and trees, where he later died.
Now, from there, RCMP have mapped out the many homes that Miles, acting alone, either forcibly entered or was allowed into by the residents. He broke windows, he assaulted residents, he killed many of them, in some cases stealing vehicles, and in some cases where an assault took place and the victim survived, he returned to that scene, ensuring there would not be any survival of that victim. We heard how one of the men he attacked, Earl Burns Sr., jumped into a school bus and gave chase of Miles Sanderson, but did eventually succumb to his injuries in that school bus, ending up in the ditch, and Earl Burns Sr. did die that day. From there, Miles Sanderson, he left the James Cree First Nation, we heard. He went to a community called Kenescano, where he was looking for gas and money. He approached a female who lived there, a resident. She denied him what he was looking for. He didn't hurt her, though. The same could not be said, though, for Wesley Peterson, 71 years old, living in Weldon, Saskatchewan. That is where RCMP say that Miles Sanderson went next, encountering Peterson, the senior citizen, sitting on his front porch. An assault took place. Peterson died, and then Sanderson rummaging through his house for things that he was needing. It was from there, that was September 5th. What happened on September 6th is a bit of an unknown. It was September 7th, they say, in Crystal Springs, where Sanderson stole the white Avalanche, which he was eventually found by RCMP to be driving. In that case, he had gone up to a resident's home, tried to gain entry. She recognized him from the alerts from RCMP, wouldn't let him in. He broke the window, took her cell phone. Eventually, she gave him the keys. He didn't hurt her. He then went to the First Arrow First Nation, asking somebody there for help. He was denied, and so sped away. He's seen speeding away in that white Avalanche, and that, of course, is where RCMP picked things up, an unmarked vehicle, spotting the white Avalanche. They now knew that he was driving, and able to eventually force him off the road. He was taken into custody on September 7th in the afternoon, and we know, Andrew, of course, that he did subsequently die in police custody. The details on all of that not to come until the coroner's inquest.
And how are the families responding to this new information?
Well, at a sensitivity, the RCMP had already provided them with the details of this timeline yesterday, so they've had time to take it in and digest what details they may not have already known. Some, we understand, are upset. Others say that, in particular, Daryl Burns, who lost his sister on September 5th, he talked about what the timeline has meant to him and the fact that it answers some questions, and it sheds some light on the chaos that was happening in the community in those early morning hours. Take a listen.
Looking back on it, you couldn't really tell where he was going to go or what he was going to do or who he was targeting or anything like that. So it was just a total mess. Like the whole morning was a total mess. You look back and we question the RCMP on what their involvement was, but for me, and reviewing all the timeline yesterday, like how in the heck could they know where he was going to be or what he was going to do, you know? So for me, it answered a lot of questions, and it brought a little bit of closure.
Now, that said, he also told our reporter, Sam Sanderson, who's on the ground, that he hopes that that the details that are coming out today, Andrew, are not going to overshadow what is, for him, the bigger issue for the James Smith First Nation, that being the James Smith Cree First Nation, that being that the addiction and drugs continues to be a huge problem, and he wants that to be the big takeaway for the public as they hear this.
All right, Sarah, thank you. The CBC's Sarah Galashan.
You bet.